United Worlds Treaty. The biggest threat humanity faces is ourselves. But why do we fight? We kill each other's wives and children. We plunder each other's riches and steal the innocence from each other's souls. We exact revenge, seek vengeance, and that's all a cycle of abuse, trauma, and death. We were born traumatized into a world that is kill or be killed, survival of the fittest, fight or flight, and our genetic memory from millions of years of ancestral experiences gives us our survival instinct. Our brains formed from our upbringings to assign other groups of people as enemies that don't look like us. So it is all we've known. Our brains are trained to be selfish, resentful, and sinister for survival. We're like sharks in the mother's womb, eating the weakest among us to make ourselves stronger. Some nations like China indoctrinate their children to see America as the enemy, and we personally see China and Russia as the enemy. We experience uncertainty about the future, and in the pursuit of blissful security, we have to be selfish and non-remorseful towards our perceived enemies. We have separate nations with separate economic interests, and we're in competition against each other over control of the present and the future. Selfish people from all sides sacrifice peace for profit, because from war, wealth, and power exchanges between bloody hands. What if I told you we could end war and unite in under 1 second? Well, it's possible to end war in under 1 second and unite if only we realize that we're in this together against the universe. And instead of competing against each other to achieve the same goals, we could be working together to achieve them 100 times as fast. When we use technology to make everyone prosperous, and we have treaties with our enemies, then the next generations are being raised in true peacetime. When you have a generation born into true global peacetime, they are not being raised to hate or trained to fight. Then those are the future leaders that will sustain the peace and prosperity they were born into. Not only that, but now those generations are in a mental state that is primed for creativity and productivity, in turn accelerating our rate of progress. What does it take to come to that psychological and spiritual realization that we should all be friends instead of foes? Fear is one way, fear of imminent destruction that forces the nations to work together and become fully economically fused for survival. Love is another way, love for each other and an unwavering desire for each other to prosper. Who doesn't want love? And who doesn't want prosperity? Everyone wants that, but we only know war against each other. The United Worlds Treaty is an agreement between global powers and all members of the human race in our solar system to work together to achieve our ultimate goals. China does not need to have their own space program to compete against America's. We can work together to advance our fused interests instead of moving towards a space war over rocks in space. Obviously, they can have their own space programs with their own secret agendas, as long as it's not evil. But on all the other limit-breaking explorations, we will be working together under one main human space program. Whatever China needs for their people, we'll help them however much they'll accept our help in improving civilian life. And they can return the favor for our people if they so wish. We can still have separate borders and separate cultures with separate governments, but we must fuse our short and long-term goals together. Imagine how much more prosperous we can be and how much faster we can achieve our ultimate goals if we're working together. China wants to expand and conquer more land because they've existed for thousands of years, and at the highest levels of their government, they have century-long agendas to expand their borders and power. China can choose to stop pursuing global control if they realize there is no point. What is the point of conquering the world if the world isn't a threat to their existence, and all you did was waste your lifetimes? What is the point of becoming the greatest China if at the end of the day you paid for it with the greatest sins, and you set yourselves back centuries compared to how far we can go together? Right now, as I explained, it's a generational cycle of the pursuit of power for temporary survival and temporary prosperity. However, if they saw all we want is peace, saw we are not a threat to them, saw we want to help them become greater, and together we can sustainably reach the stars even faster, then it would be against their interests to say no to this treaty. It would be against their interests, because everyone else besides them will agree to work together, and that would mean now China has to fight against a united world, not separate nations. The people of Earth are rising together, and so for China to exclude themselves would mean imminent space wars that will dull our pace of hyper-expansion. It's a whole different course of history. We are uniting, and we're going to achieve our ultimates, and China will join us at the forefront, because it will preserve their right to passage into the future. The future belongs to the righteous people of Earth, and the worst of us will not make it without summoning God's wrath. Everyone is about to get one final chance to become good under this treaty, because there is no alternative that doesn't end with total destruction. We're either going to unite our worlds or the universe will reject us. We're either going to fuse our economic interests and see eye to eye, or we'll lose sight of all we can become together. Everyone knows we can't keep up the warfront charades without eventually escalating to a nuclear holocaust. We literally don't have an option but to cease our primitive quarrels against fellow humans. China, do you want to lead us towards total destruction, or do you want to empower your people, accelerate your rate of advancement, and gain complete security without war as an imminent impending threat? From the perspective of the universe and its creators, we are the same beings. We have the same blood and ultimate purpose. Will you remain adversarial, blinded by the quest for temporary supremacy? Will you sacrifice your people, your time, and your future over the temporary pursuit of limited power and degradable possessions? Or do you feel this new bond between us strengthening with every moment of clarity that passes? You're about to meet new American leaders that want nothing more than peace, and when the time comes, we pray you will choose to help lead us to our utopia. The United Worlds Treaty needs you to choose good over evil, and as an immediate result, you will achieve complete national security for your people, because war is not an option. We're done fighting, and we're done with the pursuit of selfish power. The new Americans rising to power are not interested in those primitive desires, and your rising stars that aren't indoctrinated to hate want nothing more than love amongst our people as well. All the people of Earth want the same thing, except those that serve evil. The evil that exists in the world is out in the open, and this battle between good and evil ends one of two ways: in total destruction or heaven on earth and beyond, utopian dream or dystopian nightmare. Come, let us work together for future generations to start a new cycle of only peace and prosperity. Don't go back to your thrones of bones and sip from your chalice of sinful pride, but recognize the opportunity we have to maximize our purposeful evolution together. It's logically more worth it to benefit from each other's plentiful advancements than to obstruct each other's progress to the point of imminent destruction. It's also the most spiritually rewarding and entertaining course for history, because we will be younger beings when we finally achieve the later levels of technological advancement. Instead of being 90 when we'd have personal spacecrafts, we can be 40, or you can be 90, but still feel 40 and live for another 100 years. You already know the existence of America accelerated our pace of advancement, because freedom and prosperity breeds hyper-creativity and hyper-productivity. Think about how much more we can create if we bred a generation in Utopia, without letting them become dodo birds. What of the globalist elites with all the money, intelligence, corporate, and international government power? They have their own agenda for how they plan to inhabit space, our lands, and use the technology they've consolidated control of. Do they not? Obviously, not everyone is thinking as small as most of you. If they have their own agenda for each level of technology we advance to, and the fate of humanity, which doesn't include a utopia, then how will they react to this treaty and this global movement towards one? We don't want war with those that currently own the most, of whom have their own plans for the future. It would seem that they are willing and are capable of doing anything to see their plans through, given what has already transpired, and if it means committing the greatest sins, they'll do it. Is that not correct? maybe they will peacefully break away from our civilization and carry on with their quest for biological, technological superiority without disrupting us lesser life forms. It's funny, but it's true if you've been paying attention. Literally, that's one of the most likely outcomes if we're putting a high price tag on the best gene therapy abilities and a high price tag on space exploration. You know, not every breakthrough is public knowledge, because some things you don't want other people to know exists if you discovered it. For instance, a lot of the abilities gene therapy grants the user are pulled from out of nature, like a type of jellyfish or from the spinal fluid of an endangered indigenous animal. If it's valuable, you don't want others to know the source or the information, so you won't write a paper on it, which is how you'd exhibit your findings. This also is a good example of the type of science-related patents that are being filed more than ever by these billionaire names. These groups and families of billionaires have their own labs and R&D centers specifically for discovering breakthroughs for themselves and their people. They're not working on something to empower humanity without benefiting themselves the most. When they find something truly limit-breaking, they would logically keep it for themselves, not empower all of humanity without a bottom line. Right? If the right people were in control, you see how they would choose to empower humanity without a bottom line. It would be nice to pretend like we're living in a world without evil, where everyone is as sightless as we common folks are, and where the thousands of billionaires that exist don't conspire against us every single day. Perhaps they will join this Treaty of Worlds and share their gifts of knowledge and creation with us. Notice how I'm speaking as if they're superior in any way. It's just a fact that when you're a billionaire for life, your whole community of elites operates fundamentally different than you and I. They have long-term plans. They own the technology you're now learning about, and they've been ahead of the game since you started. You have to be rich to travel to space. Do you understand that? If you're not a billionaire, you're not participating in elite existence. Whether we're talking about touring space, accessing the best gene therapies, or owning the high-tech possessions